Monday morning. So, Conference, we now move on to resolutions, and the first resolution that we will deal with this morning is number 6, which is entitled Fishing, Marine Protection and Community-Based Conservation, and that will be moved by Angus MacLeod of Shettleston Branch, to be followed, seconding the resolution, by Councillor Glenn Reynolds of Peterhead. So welcome, Angus.
Thank you, Convener. Delegates, I want to start with a story. About 90 years ago, one of our party's founders, Sir Compton Mackenzie, then Lord Rector of Glasgow University, set out to create an organisation to protect traditional fishing grounds and to ensure that Scottish fisheries would provide jobs for generations to come. Alongside him was the folklorist John Lorne Campbell, my great-grandfather Donald MacLeod, known as Ndot, and his brothers, and many other Barra and West Coast fishermen. Together, they created the Sea League, Common Iascarin Namara, to fight for Scottish fishermen and to protect our seas. They organised and campaigned, and then in 1934, the Illegal Trawling Scotland Act became law. But they continued to look at and advocate for sustainable fishing practice and marine protection, following models being used in Norway and the Faroes. Now, times change and technology changes, and our environment is changing. But I tell this story today to remind ourselves that our national movement from its earliest days has sought to empower our fishing communities. So, turning to the text of the resolution, and given the nature of the debate on fishing and the environment, my branch felt it was important we return to first principles. It is a question of values. The resolution is an amalgamated one, including text from Peterhead Branch, Orkney Branch, and Nehellan and Nier CB. And what it seeks to do is reassert the importance of community leadership in our fisheries and marine protection policy. Fundamentally, if we let our communities be involved in policy design, we will have more informed policy that will be workable and that reflects the reality of the sector. In other words, before ganula of itangle gan hiascarin a dolgamud is a kuran beha and kunnerst gus an duich a viag, hayalas agus glich gasachke a before a viag ches mian jespits and bee me ein klachkel namada. Ha vuth na vunste de choirschnucken agus de roi vehe as hai a kria kulter. Shakisht Kjarstis Ahasho. And as we are calling for greater community and sectoral involvement from the get-go, the resolution does not seek to rewrite a fishing and marine protection policy in 3 paragraphs on behalf of those communities. Rather, it is a firm statement of our belief and values as the supreme governing body of the Scottish National Party that fishing and marine protection policy should be led by our maritime communities. There's been much talk about world-leading policy in this sector, and I agree, but world-leading for whom? Let's be world-leading in terms of community involvement and world-leading in terms of promoting sustainable fishing. So, to conclude, and with a further return to first principles, all of us in this room want to be governed by a government that recognises the people as sovereign, not the imperial crown and parliament. So as we look and work towards independence, it is time now to ensure that our policy making looks first to the people, that with a sense of social justice and protecting our most fragile communities, we reject the centralisation and top-down bureaucratic culture forged in Whitehall. Please vote today to support the entirely reasonable and entirely just principle that those who risk their lives working at sea should have a serious say on the policies that affect them. Please support the resolution. One and thank.
Angus. To follow Angus and seconding resolution number 6, please welcome Councillor Glenn Reynolds, who will be followed by Francis Murray.
Good morning, Conference. Conference, I'm very happy to second this resolution as someone within a CA, including Peter Hidd, who were not only behind much of the drafting of the resolution, but is an area world-renowned for its fishing industry. Following the recent selection process, I should also add, Conference, that I also, as the next MP for West Aberdeenshire and Kincardine, will send... Thank you, Conference. Will send Tory MP Andrew Bowie packing in 2024. An area with its own distinctive coastal community. Colleagues, the process surrounding HPMAs has not been our finest hour, and the Scottish Government is doing the right thing by rethinking this process and its timetable. Fishers believe that consultation and meaningful engagement with communities has not been adequate and will be essential in achieving the greatest benefits from marine management measures that will improve the health of Scotland's seas. A localised approach, colleagues, ensuring that local communities are consulted and have a core role in designating HPMAs, is crucial for these sites to have a significant positive impact on the environment and our coastal communities. The First Minister, Humza Yousaf, had assured MSPs that policies will not be imposed, quote, on communities that don't want them, close quotes, and reiterated that HPMAs are still at a very early stage, with criteria and site selection to be decided. So we must get this right by our coastal communities, still reeling from being used as Brexit poster boys by the Tory party. The fishing industry has said exactly that in terms of the Tory betrayal that they have been subjected to. But colleagues, this HMPA process also sits alongside that currently underway in terms of the local governance review published at the end of August, which found that people like those in Peterhead and other coastal communities desired much greater control over what happens in the places they know best. And this, as stated in the governance review, creates an exciting opportunity to promote what could be the biggest transformation to democracy since devolution. Peterhead is a fishing capital, and in bringing forward this motion, the local fishers worked with the fishing industry and conservation groups on this motion and managed to create something that both camps could agree on. We should be looking at a win-win situation for all stakeholders here. Peterhead have led the way on this, and the Scottish Government can now do the same. Colleagues, please support the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Our next speaker speaking in favour of the resolution is Francis Murray of Nahelan and Yar constituency branch, to be followed by David Burkett from Peterhead branch. Welcome, Francis.
Martin Va. We in Nahelan and Yar constituency branch are very pleased to support this resolution, particularly with the important addition of the words "and fully island-proofed" in the first sentence of paragraph 3. Communities and community voice are key to any future fishing and maritime proposals. We must never again present our political opponents with the opportunity to portray this party as being disconnected from our coastal communities, which of course they attempted to do earlier this year, with the Labour Party in particular having the audacity and hypocrisy to ignore its own policy, which is no surprise to any of us, in its rush to condemn the consultation. However, moving away from their false outrage, there was genuine upset and anger in our communities that our government could be even considering such an unwelcome approach to maritime conservation as the late and unlamented HPMAs. So passing this resolution will ensure that local knowledge, local experience and local priorities will be front and centre going forward, and that local democracy will be the winner in our fragile communities. As the First Minister said yesterday, we need to listen to the Scottish people, and this resolution will show that we do intend to listen to the fishing communities and that we are truly the party that serves the interests of all Scotland's communities. Please support the resolution.
Thank you very much, Francis. Delegates, our next speaker speaking for the resolution is David Burkett of Peterhead Branch, and he'll be followed by Councillor Brian Goodall. Welcome to David.
Good morning, Conference. It's an honour to support this resolution today. I live in the largest white fish port in, I was going to say Europe. Well, still is in Europe, geographically at least. I'm inclined to that for now. And it's a fishing community I want to focus on today. Colleagues, I'm a seafarer. I've worked in the same harsh seas as they have. I've seen the risks they take. I've wept at funerals for friends who've paid the ultimate price, not in uniform in some far-flung war, but just to provide the seafood that leads the world. Colleagues, I'm sure you guess by now, it's hard, hard work. The people doing it deserve to be richly rewarded for it. I'm sure we can all understand why recently they've felt a little bit unappreciated. And as you can imagine, trying to promote the SNP, independence and return it to the European Union has been a sore fecht in our area for a wee while. But colleagues, when the sun didn't rise over Boris's Brexit uplands, when the rivers of milk and honey that were promised didn't flow forth, the anger and disappointment was palpable in my community. And crucially, our seafood and fishing sector were starting to talk to us again. We were starting to mend burned bridges, and we were starting to make progress, and that was until the prospect of the highly protected marine areas came along. No government is ever going to get everything right all of the time, and we have to put our hands up that definitely wasn't our finest hour. The need for conservation is undeniable, but we got that wrong. Conference, quite often in areas like Peterhead in the North East, there's a feeling that a government in Edinburgh is just as remote and out of touch as one in London. And when I, as a loyal party member, started to feel that too, well, alarm bells were ringing. So I was really, really glad when the Scottish Government decided to pause the implementation. We now have an opportunity to get this right. Conference, no one has a bigger stake in the sustainability of our world-leading Scottish seafood. No one has more lived experience of cack-handed conservation measures being applied by far-off legislators. It's difficult to say that, isn't it? And no one actually knows how to do conservation better than the good people who already catch and process our seafood on our behalf. And my friends, we do very well to listen to them. Successive out-of-touch UK governments have let them down. Boris Johnson's remote and out-of-touch government certainly let them down, breaking every Brexit promise made to them. Let's not have our SNP-led Scottish government added to that long and undistinguished list. Conference, let's change the story. Let's be the government that listened to them. Let's be the government that empowered them. Let's not be the government that impoverished them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. And our final speaker on resolution number 6, speaking for the resolution, is Councillor Brian Goodall.
Good morning, Conference. A few weeks ago, I travelled from Rosyth via Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh to Little Loch Broom with a group of fellow volunteers for the Restoration Forth project. Our mission, and we chose to accept it, was to collect and clean thousands of native oysters that had been specially farmed for us. Scraping and cleaning those oysters was the first stage of a biosecurity process that would allow us to bring them back east with us so they could be released at some specially selected sites into the Firth of Forth. These oysters would become the first native oysters in the Firth of Forth for over 100 years. Restoration Forth is a brilliant example of a community-based conservation project, which is restoring 2 key habitats, native oyster beds and seagrass meadows. The seagrass provides a fantastic habitat with a huge amount of biodiversity, and it also sequesters a significant amount of carbon. and the oysters will hopefully re-establish their own unique ecosystem, providing a new home for a great many different aquatic species. But the oysters also provide us with a cautionary tale, as around 100 years ago, the native oyster beds in the Firth of Forth became the first fishery in the world to be fished to extinction. The idea that humans could impact a species that seemed so abundant was just something that no one ever thought about back then. But now we know better, and we have absolutely no excuse for ever letting such extinction events happen again. So there's no expectation that an oyster fishery would ever be re-established in the Forth, as it's a different species, the Pacific oyster, that is now used in most commercially farmed oysters for human consumption. But as this motion highlights, and as the other speakers have mentioned, there are a large number of other fisheries around our waters which require a focus on sustainability, and this is vital. What's even more important is that this is done in partnership between conservation science and commercial and community interests. That will be the way to provide the most positive future. We also need to recognise that we're in the midst of a biodiversity crisis, and there will be times when the need for conservation will trump local commercial interests. And that will mean a local partnership approach will be more challenging, but it will still be the best way to go. So, Conference, with that note of caution, I hope you will agree the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Brian was our final speaker on resolution number 6. We have no cards in seeking to speak against the resolution. So can I take it, therefore, that resolution number 6 is passed by acclaim? Thank you.